Bill here with TGI Sports Talk College Football Huddle. We got a little lighting problem tonight. I'm going to try something different with some backgrounds. I had a fiddle at the last minute, so we got a little bit of distortion in the upper right-hand corner there. Looks like our internet might be a little bit on and off tonight. We'll find out how that goes. We'll try to keep abreast of that. Please let me know how your feed is. I'll let you know if I see myself buffering a little bit. But it's good to have you all with me tonight. We're going to talk about the world of college football. Lots going on. Jim Harbaugh, suspension news, NIL, congressional bill proposal by former college coach Tommy Tuberville, co-sponsoring a bipartisan bill. We'll talk a little bit about Miami and Marco Cristobal and why he thinks last year went awry because of some culture issues. We'll talk about some hot coordinators. We'll talk Northwestern, give you a little update there. And we'll talk much, much more and bring your topics and your comments. So please feel free to do that at any point during this show. Oh, guys. I welcome everybody. Sorry, it's been a hectic day today. I welcome everybody on Northeast Streaming Sports Network. I welcome everybody on Let's Talk Sports. If you see us later on Sideline Sports, we'll welcome, we're happy to have you with us as well, or viewing us. You can catch TGI Sports Talk and all my shows on TGI Sports Talk on Facebook. Let's talk, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Any place you want to find it, you can find it probably. Amazon. Oh, I don't know. Again, we're having some internet issues. I have got to get, I am plugged in, by the way. I hope this feed's going all right, and I hope somebody will comment on it as they are logging in here. In fact, right now would be the perfect time to tell me what you see on your feed, whoever's with us, because I can see my little internet bars coming up, and I don't see that until there's a potential issue. Anyway, listen, last week we were back from our first week after a hiatus, 2 or 3 months. And hello, Rick Sherlock. Rick says our feed is good and probably getting tired of me asking that question. That's good to know. Everything's good because it's a little shaky from my side. Great reaction last week. Maybe not as much in action in the room as we normally have when the season gets started. But, God, we had some great support from the college groups that we share to, and the normal short sports groups we share to. My thanks go out to John Gonzalez and the sports authorities, who are always a big supporter of this show. He was on a lot with us on Sunday, commenting on some of the different things going on in the world of sports. So we'll get into a lot of that today. I wanted to get in. First thing I want to talk about tonight, and you guys, again, feel free to bring up whatever topics you want. This is your show as well. Tonight's first topic I want to get into, because I'm not sure I understand what's going on here. Well, I guess I do. And it does look like there'll be a suspension. I've gotten mixed reports today, whether there's a 4-game suspension looming and there's still some negotiation going on between the NCAA and Michigan and Jim Harbaugh and whomever. Violations. They were investigated for things that happened in 2019, basically, during the COVID season, during the down period. If you will, during COVID, where they weren't supposed to be reaching out to recruits. He was buying kids cheeseburgers or whatever. Also, coaches were watching workouts when they shouldn't have been interacting with players. They were watching practice sessions on Zoom. Also, analysts participating in practice on the field, which is a violation. Anyway, all of these things are pretty minor that came up, but like everything, you go back to Watergate or before, It's never the crime. It's always the cover-up. He lied to investigators several times. Or, I'm sorry. We shouldn't use the word lied because he uses the word gave false statements. The university's saying he gave false statements. Why not just admit what you did? You get a slap on the wrist and you move on. They weren't going to have major sanctions against them for these violations, most likely, given the NCAA. Who the hell knows? But maybe his friend Kaepernick can step on it. By the way, his defensive coordinator during that time, and the guy's name's escaping me. He now is on his brother's staff. He's a defensive coordinator for the Ravens. But he's been given a penalty or going to receive a penalty, I believe it's a show cause penalty, where it'll make it much tougher if he ever wants to get a college job again. So he's also going to be wrapped up in this. And listen, does this really even matter? I mean, yeah, when your head coach is suspended, it matters. But, Michigan's first four games are all at home. Number one. Let me take a quick look here. I want to look at their schedule. All at home. So here's what he would miss. And again, there's the punishment, there's the crime, there's the cover-up, and there's the punishment for either or. If he suspended these 3 games, here's who he misses. All 4 games at home. East Carolina, UNLV, one of the worst programs in the country, or has been, Bowling Green, and Rutgers, arguably the worst program in the Big Ten. All at home in the big house. Michigan starts 4-0. Jim Harbaugh there or not. I don't believe there were any other sanctions for, I don't have it up here, so for anybody else besides Jim Harbaugh in these allegations. I'll find it here because I know I brought some stuff up about this. Mandel's. Well, maybe I didn't. Thought I did. But again, so there's a whole group of people now on both sides of this issue, right? So there's people saying they've gotten preferential treatment, that he should have got a harsher penalty, that they should be sanctioned for recruiting, take scholarships away, potential bowl game, have bowl invitations suspended for X amount of time because of the cover-up or because of the crime. And then there's people saying it's too harsh because, the crimes don't fit the punishment. And the other side saying the punishment doesn't fit the crimes. And part of this is because it's Jim Harbaugh, I think. Wow. As far as Colin Kaepernick, and by the way, I'm not so sure that Colin Kaepernick and Harbaugh are such great friends. Kaepernick had a great year under Jim Harbaugh in San Francisco, went to the Super Bowl, one good year. He found a way to take advantage of the what Colin Kaepernick. I'm having a hard time looking at this and not saying Kaepernick. I apologize. He took advantage of his talents in the pistol, and then the league caught up with it. Jim Harbaugh got out of town because he knew he didn't have a quarterback. So, and by the way, Colin Kaepernick's career has been over for a long time. And I will continue to say, when it comes to Colin Kaepernick, I'll say this right now. Again, he is only not in the league because he can't play. If he could play, he'd be on a team. I won't get into that too deep because we're talking college football here today. So Jim Harbaugh, I don't know. Is this Does this even warrant any conversation? He's a guy who generates great emotion on either side of his argument. To me, I can take or leave Jim Harbaugh. I don't care. I think he's a very good football coach. I don't know what kind of person he is. I watched a good one of the All for Nothings. If you haven't watched that series on Prime, if you have Prime Video, you can watch this. And they followed a bunch of teams. They followed the NFL teams in season, followed the Cardinals, followed the Eagles, followed the Rams one year. They haven't had one, I think, since just after COVID, or maybe just before COVID even. But they follow some soccer teams through their seasons in the Premier League and whatnot. I think they've done some hockey. They also did one on Michigan. And I think Jim Harbaugh comes off, and again, I understand reality TV stops being reality when the cameras come on. But I thought he came off as a decent guy. I mean, I don't have an opinion about Jim Harbaugh. People seem very opinionated about Jim Harbaugh for whatever reason, one way or the other. Probably because, he's jumped jobs like, all coaches do, which I'm going to talk a little bit again about Lane Kiffin and the Pitt coach had some interesting comments that I just read before I came on about during the ACC media days about the NIL and the transfer portal. And this seems to be a pretty good time to bring that up, as there is going to be legislation talking about it. But, what has Jim Harbaugh ever done except he pretty much win? I mean, he has won a national championship, but he went to the University of San Diego, did a tremendous job there. Tremendous job in probably one of the worst places you could be in college football. Gets a better job at Stanford. Resuscitates a dead program at Stanford. Gets a shot to coach in the NFL. Does well, takes his team to the Super Bowl, loses. And then goes back to his alma mater. So I don't know that his career path is that much worse than or any worse than the natural course of people's careers, where they've improved themselves at each stop. Maybe NFL to Michigan might be backwards a little, I suppose, depending on how you want to look at it. But I don't think, going to a Power 5 conference you're not going to, Northwestern, for instance. Talk a little bit about their coaching search later. I'm not sure why Jim Harbaugh gets this bad rap. And he's got Michigan winning better than they have at any time since Lloyd Carr retired. Tom Brady's favorite coach. Anyway, what do you got here, Rick? Oh, not a Vikings coach, thank God. But why? I'm curious, Rick. Again, I'm having a hard time putting my finger on why is Jim Harbaugh so reviled? Why is he? I don't get it. He's turned programs around wherever he's gone. You can say what he's done at Michigan until the last 2 years. He almost got fired because he had a down season during COVID, had his salary reduced, had his coaching staff changed over. But why? You're glad he's not the Minnesota coach. He's been to a Super Bowl, and your coach hasn't. That's not a shot at Kevin O'Connell. He's a real good young coach. But I'm not sure I understand the vitriol towards Jim Boeheim. Good God! I saw Dave Guyette pop in. I must have had Syracuse pop in my head. Good evening, Dave Guyette. Good to have you with us today on the football huddle. I got stuff crashing around me here. Studio's falling apart. So again, Rick, I really would like to see your opinion on why you wouldn't want Jim Harbaugh. Now you've got a good young coach. I mean, I don't think you could say, some people will say he's an opportunist and looked for the next best job. But I would argue that no, he's just improved his lot every time he's made a move, from San Diego to Stanford to the 49ers. And then maybe I would say at worst, it's a lateral move to Michigan, his alma mater, for a lot of money. Turn the program around. I don't care what you said. This program was nowhere under Brady Hoke, under Rich Rodriguez, under I guess there were only two guys that were there in between, Lloyd Carr and Jim Harbaugh. I mean, why? Hope you're typing, Rick. I want to know. Why do we hate Jim Harbaugh so much? He goes places and wins. He hasn't won a national championship, hasn't won a Super Bowl. I get it. He's been taking his team to the playoff 2 years in a row out of a tough Big Ten. He's beat Ohio State, which is really the only job requirement at Michigan when you think about it. You can win all your games and lose at Michigan, and you're going to lose your job. I'm sorry, lose to Ohio State or Michigan, depending on where you're coaching. You're going to lose your job. See John Cooper. It goes your favorite subject. He's playing the Michigan team against the Vikings. I get you. I don't know if he was, though. I guess he was. In that circumstance, I would say you're right. I mean, up until that time, I don't see anything wrong with his career progression. When he has looked to go back, and he has several times now floated, including this year a little bit, floated the idea that he might return to the NFL or might want to return to the NFL, might be open to it. So I guess I get that. But would it matter at the end of the day? If he's just using you, I mean, again, there's a difference. If he's leveraging Minnesota just to improve his lot at Michigan, which I think it is exactly what you're saying, and I do remember talking about it at the time. I'm not crazy about coaches doing that, but people do it all the time. I've done it. Had an offer, a few years back. I really didn't use leverage, though. I gave my notice. I was out the door before they brought me back with a better package. Guess I didn't really leverage anything. I was prepared to go. But if you're just using the team, you're using the Vikings to improve your lot with your current employer, the University of Michigan, then I guess I understand why you wouldn't want that guy there. Was he totally sold on being there? Now is he in it just for the money? Maybe. I don't think anybody can argue, though. Jim Harbaugh's one heck of a football coach. Khaki pants or not. He went to the Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick as his quarterback. Pretty much tells you all you need to know there, right? Anyway, let's move on from Mr. Huggable. I want to talk a little bit about the new NIL bill proposed by Congress. So it's a bipartisan bill, which is a unique thing. It's almost like a unicorn today. Tommy Tuberville, Republican out of Alabama, former coach at Ole Miss, former coach at Auburn, former coach at Texas Tech, former coach at Cincinnati, now senator from Alabama, and Joe Manchin, Democrat from West Virginia. Actually, was a college football recruit at West Virginia, and injuries ended his college career in the 60s, I want to say. So they sponsored a bill called the PASS Act, which is supposed to, and by the way, nothing's happened yet. And again, this is what the NCAA is waiting for, right? I wasn't necessarily on board that this is what should happen, but somebody's got to step in because it's the Wild Wild West. And the PASS Act will touch on a lot of things. It'll touch on reining in NIL money a little bit. It'll touch on protecting players and protecting them off the field and on the field health-wise. And it will even touch on the transfer portal a bit. is one of the, there's 6 points to this bill. The first point, oh, no, I lost it. I can't believe it. Okay, well, see if I can find it. If I didn't, so there's 6 points of this. I want to find the damn. I had a great article, and I'm having a bad night. I cleared it away, but maybe I can find it. I think this is it right here. So there's 6 points to this. I'll give you some quotes, by the way, from both of these guys in a second. Here's the main points. No pay per play. So the bill would ensure an equal playing field by prohibiting NIL being used as an inducement for what a player to move from one university to another. It would also require boosters and collectives to be affiliated with a school, which is a little bit different because in the beginning they said schools could not be directly affiliated, but that's already become a non-thing. Health and safety. The bill would provide coverage for sports-related injuries and ensure student athletes for 8 years following graduation from a 4-year institution. Larger schools would be required to pay for such expenses for a period even after. Larger schools would be required to pay for such expenses for a period even after the student leaves the school. That's interesting. I guess that's without graduation. Protecting a student athlete off the field. The bill would establish additional protections for student athletes beyond the playing field and beyond the classroom. It would require that a student athlete be educated on their legal and regulatory rights and basic financial literacy. Help them spend their money correctly, not on crack and hookers. Sorry. It would preserve the athlete's initial scholarship commitment for education, regardless of whether the athlete obtained an NIL deal or incurred injury. Now, that's important too, because as NIL deal monies grow, scholarship limits will become a little bit of a gray area, because I could get a kid who can get a $10 million NIL to come to my school and I'll give him a scholarship. He can pay his own way and walk on. So that's another thing that people haven't talked about that the NIL money has touched on is the scholarship. It hasn't hurt it yet that I'm aware of, or nobody's found a way around this, but it could. Oversight and transparency. The PASS Act would strengthen oversight and enforcement of NIL activities, of which right now there are basically none. There's a few states that put some laws in place. Otherwise, it's just governed by the colleges themselves, which we know is a recipe for disaster. Non-student parties involved in NIL activities would be required to register and make their contracts public. So all of this information would be out in the open. It would empower the NCAA to audit compliance and refer potential bad actors to the FTC. Get the FTC involved, people might stand up and take notice. People go to jail. It would also establish a uniform standard contract for all NIL deals. It would clarify NIL activity. It would establish national standards for all NIL activity, and the bill would ban endorsement contracts for certain industries, such as drug paraphernalia, obviously with marijuana becoming legal in so many states. That's an issue. Dangerous weapons or gambling. All makes sense. If I'm not mistaken, a player at Miami got involved with highlight, which is the sport exists to gamble on. It would also ensure that nothing in the bill would impact the employment status of the student athlete. So this would not be the students becoming employees of the universities, which is an important differentiator, right? The bill would provide stability. This is the transfer part of it. The bill would provide stability for teams by moderating the use of the transfer portal. Student athletes may not enter the portal during their first 3 years of eligibility without penalty, with some exceptions. Now, again, I've said if a coach leaves, a kid should be able to leave. The first 5 points of emphasis within the bill are largely conventional. The 6 regarding transfers will be a point of contention, almost guaranteed. I wanted to go back to a little bit of Tommy Tuberville, again, a former coach. His quote was, student athletes should be able to take advantage of the NIL promotional activities without impacting their ability to play collegiate sports. But we need to ensure the integrity of our higher education system. Well, there's a unique philosophy. Remain focused on education and keep the playing field level. By the way, before NIL, the playing field was not level. It's one of the big fallacies of the NIL is that it's made the playing field unlevel. It wasn't level before. My legislation with Senator Manchin would set basic rules nationwide, protect our student athletes, and keep NIL activities from ending college sports as we know it. Joe Manchin said, as a former college athlete, I know how important sports are to gaining valuable life skills and opening doors of opportunity. He's not talking about the NFL necessarily. He's talking about in life. However, in recent years, we have faced a rapid evolving NIL landscape without guidelines to navigate it, which jeopardizes the health of the players and the educational mission of colleges and universities. Our bipartisan, there's that word again, legislation strikes a balance between protecting the rights of student athletes and maintaining the integrity of the sports world, of the sports in college. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to consider this common sense legislation, which means it's going to have no shot, right? You put common sense in front of a congressional member and he'll freeze and panic like he's a deer in a scope of a rifle. So anyway, what does this all mean? I don't know. First of all, it's got to pass. The legislation's got to pass. Second of all, it's got to be policed. Who's going to police it? The NCAA's already shown they can't. There was a quote in here from Charlie Baker, too, the new president of the NCAA. There's some other university presidents here. Who cares what they got to say? They've caused most of the frickin' problems anyway. Anyway, Charlie, listen, people want to make these players employees of the university. Can't do that. Unless they start giving them parts of the TV contracts or whatnot, they're not parts of this university. This is money, theoretically, from outside of the university. So will this help? I think, again, I have said all along, when you take the transfer portal and the NIL separately, there are parts of it that I can understand. When it comes to the paying of players, these universities are making tons of money off the backs of these kids, and kids get hurt, and universities cut them loose. Or they don't make it to the NFL. They don't get their education. They cut them loose. The kid gets flown home for his grandmother's funeral, and the kid gets in trouble, loses a scholarship. The university goes on probation. That's stupid. So I'm okay with some kind of payment going to the players. Again, they're making a lot of money already on their education. But I'm okay with them getting something else. But what I'm not okay with, and what's exactly happened, I said this would happen, when you put the NIL with the transfer portal and let kids move basically every year. Look at Daniels, the quarterback who started out, I think, at USC, went to Georgia, went to West Virginia, and now he's gone somewhere else this year. Where's JT Daniels gone to this year? Who can tell me? That's the question of the day. Nobody knows. I don't even know. But I know he's with his fourth school in 4 years. Where is he? Rice. This is where the system went off the rails. You had the star guard from Miami last year on the basketball team, and his name's escaping me at the moment, but He was holding school hostage because he was getting higher offers, which it says specifically in this bill you cannot do. You cannot go out and look for a better deal somewhere else and then hold your, similar to what Rick talked about with Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. And then theoretically you're a free agent every year. So it's interesting. All this is happening now, right? Because we got a couple of coaches in my mind who have really come out as hypocrites here in this last week or so. I talked about Lane Kiffin last week, right? Lane Kiffin, who says that NIL and player movement in the portal is killing college football as we know it. Well, first of all, he's made use of that system to his benefit, at least at Ole Miss and at Florida Atlantic. And he's also a guy who left in the middle of the night, left Tennessee high and dry. Doesn't want players to have any opportunity to do that, but he took advantage of it. Coaches do it all the time. Contracts mean nothing. What lesson are we teaching the kids? If we again, as adults, we should be setting the tone for kids, and we do. We do. We set the tone for them to go and be like Jordan Addison at Pittsburgh, and let Pat Narducci. He is the coach of Pittsburgh, isn't he? He better be. Just said his name. Yeah, Pat Narducci, who really was outspoken. Actually, he's not against the NIL. He's more got a problem with Lincoln Riley and USC approaching Jordan Addison before he was officially in the portal when he went to USC last year. But he went and got $5 million. Pat Narducci, you can't complain about it when you're getting a raise or you're looking for jobs and leveraging other jobs to get a raise at your job. Similar to what Rick has said he's unhappy about Harbaugh doing, and I've said it in the past. It depends how you do it. But don't be a hypocrite. If you're against the NIL in 100%, well, then that's fine. And the transfer portal, I'm fine with it. But again, I said all along that the big problem with this situation was the two things combined. And they've got to be treated separately somehow and reined in separately somehow. And this bill might be a step towards that. Again, my big problem with this, number one, it's a common sense bill, as Joe Manchin said. So what's the chances both houses of Congress pass this legislation? We'll see. And if it does get passed, which I hope it does, who's going to police it? Now, if it's the Federal Trade Commission, well, then maybe people will open their eyes, because you know what happens when people violate Federal Trade Commission regulations? They go to prison. So we'll see what happens there. Sorry, I got a cat wandering through the studio here. So I'm curious if you guys have any opinions about that, bring them up. Let's talk about that. Northwestern update. What's a Northwestern update? More lawsuits. Northwestern hazing scandal. The ex-quarterback suit revealed new details. This is a few days ago. I'm not going to get into a lot of the details, but this was former Wildcats quarterback and wide receiver Lloyd Yates was in a lawsuit in Cook County. And according to the lawsuit, assistant coaches were ran by players on more than one occasion, ran them off while the hazing was going on. The complaint defines running as incidents in which groups of players forcibly held down a non-consenting individual and rubbed their genital areas against another person, rubbed their own against the other person's genitals, face, or buttocks while rocking back and forth. Guys, that's not sexual harassment. This isn't hazing. This is out and out sexual assault. And the coaches were aware of this. Now, I've said, and I was brought up to speed that Coach Braun, the defensive coordinator, who would be the interim coach, was brought on in February after these hazing incidents had taken place. The investigation had already begun. He's got to get rid of all his coaches. I've said this before. All of them need to go. He talks about during a training session in the fall of 2015 or spring of 2016, a strength conditioning coach was ran by members of the football team on the field in front of the entire team and coaching staff. The lawsuit does not provide any additional details about that incident, but does not identify the coaches that were allegedly subjected to the hazing acts. So I don't understand. Are the coaches were subjected to hazing themselves? We're all victims, and I want to make that clear, Yates says. No matter what role, if you're being hazed on the perpetrating side, it's just a culture that you have had to find a position within. There's got to be adults in the room that stop these things. I mean, this thing gets more convoluted every time I look at it. Coach Braun has got a monumental task ahead of him. Winning at Northwestern is hard enough. Rebuilding a culture and winning, because guess what? You can rebuild the culture if you want, all you want. At the end of the day, you're going to need to win. They've already started discussing potential replacements, assuming Coach Braun is not retained. The normal names have come up, all probably good football people. Mike Kafka, who is the Giants offensive coordinator, name comes up. Matt Campbell, who was a rising star in the coaching ranks, as you know, with Iowa State not long ago. The stock has dropped a little bit when Northwestern is where your name is popping up, although it is a Power 5 job, but he's got a Power 5 job now. Is Iowa State a worse job than Northwestern? I mean, it is the Big Ten, I understand. Dave Clawson at Wake Forest, his name has been bandied about here. Mike Echo from Duke. I don't think Mike Echo's leaving Duke right away. Willie Fritz, Tulane head coach. Chris Creighton and Sharon Moore, both, Chris Creighton is Eastern Michigan's head coach, and Sharon Moore is Michigan's offensive coordinator. Another name that I read about today, and he makes really good sense, and Rocco Mendenhall, who left Virginia a little over a year ago, of his own volition, more or less, and has turned some programs around. BYU had their own scandal when he went in there, and he changed the culture and actually turned that team into a winning program again. He did the same thing at Virginia. Turned a really bad program, got them to an Orange Bowl. Rocco Mendenhall would be a really good fit here to at least, again, assuming Coach Braun doesn't work out. He is the interim coach. If he doesn't set the world on fire or really have an impact on that culture, he's going to have to hang on to this job. So, anyway. That's the NIL news. That's the Northwestern news. What else you guys got? Bring me some topics here, guys. Let me look into a couple things here on the news wire, and then we'll go from there. Let's take a look. I want to look at some of the more interesting coordinators. I was reading this article on ESPN earlier this week or this weekend. Some coordinators that you're going to hear their names a lot this year and are going to have maybe the most impact. Ben Arbuckle. He'll be the new offensive coordinator at Washington State. He's the youngest offensive coordinator in the country at 27 years old. I should say at a power school anyway, power conference. So in the Pac-12, he'll be the play caller for Washington State at 27, as I said. He's a guy to keep an eye on. There's a lot of new coordinators like Arbuckle. We'll talk about him. He's at Washington State, offensive coordinator. His previous job was Western Kentucky's co-offensive coordinator. So this is a big jump from Western Kentucky to Washington State, playing in the Pac-12, even with USC and UCLA ready to jump ranks later on. And this is kind of the Lincoln Riley, Sean McVay effect, if you will. Youth is where the coaching profession is heading. Talented young coaches are getting opportunities sooner. You used to have to wait forever to become a coordinator, much less a head coach. Now guys are getting these jobs now in their late 20s. They're coordinators, early 30s. They're getting coordinator and head coaching jobs. We'll see whether he has, what kind of we'll see what kind of effect that he has here. His air raid knowledge makes sense here because Washington State was coached, and some of these kids were coached by Mike Leach, and Eric Morris, who oversaw the Cougars' offense in 2022 before landing the head coaching job at North Texas. Also ran the air raid system, so he's not going to change the system a whole lot at Washington State. So that'll be an interesting thing to see. Brian Nardo, defensive coordinator at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, for years, has had an offense that was really the shining star of this program under Mike Gundy. But now he's looking to right the ship a little bit. They've struggled a bit. They had some bad games last year. Man, they got blown out a lot in the second half of the season. And he had the same defensive coordinator for quite some time, and it was time to make a change. And he's taken a career path that began at Ohio, his alma mater, before hopscotching some college in the lower divisions, Division II at Missouri S&T, Emporia State, Youngstown State, and Gannett. Not a big resume to take over a Power 5 program, but again, youth seems to be winning out here, and Coach Gundy's looking to change the direction of this program a little bit because it has been kind of teetering after really having a good year a couple of years ago. It's been teetering a little, especially on the defensive side of the football. So we'll see what happens here. Phil Longo at Wisconsin, the offensive coordinator brought in by Luke Fickell to kind of change Wisconsin's approach. In fact, Luke Fickell tried to hire this kid at Cincinnati and run the air raid offense. The problem was Longo had already been hired or had an offer from Ole Miss to be their offensive coordinator. So now 6 years later, he gets his guy, bringing Longo and the air raid offense to the most unlikely of destinations, Wisconsin. Wisconsin, not synonymous with throwing the football. So the Big Ten, which has seen some changes, especially, it'll be different in that Western Division. Well, next year it'll change with USC coming in there, obviously, and UCLA. But right now, other than Purdue, Minnesota a little bit, these are still ground and pound teams. Look at Kirk Friends' offense at Iowa. Now, the Eastern Division's opened up a little bit. Ohio State certainly plays a more pro-style offense. So Wisconsin has been known for ground and pound for years, going way back to when Barry Alvarez first took over this program. It's going to be interesting to see the air raid offense run there. Will Stein at Oregon, the new offensive coordinator there. His previous job was at UTSA. UTSA I like a lot. We may talk about him tonight or when we get talking about the the conferences, I like Texas San Antonio's chances as they move into the AAC this year. I think they're going to give reigning champion Tulane all they can handle in that conference. So Coach Dillingham, who was the previous offensive coordinator, is now off to be the head coach at Arizona State. Stein arrives after a successful run with Jeff Traylor at Texas San Antonio, as I said. And he's also the 5th coordinator. By the way, Dillingham did a great job with Bo Nix. So it's going to be very interesting to see if Bo Nix can keep that level of play that he played at last year at Oregon under Dillingham. It's his 5th offensive coordinator and quarterback coach that he's had in 5 years. Let's hope Bo Nix doesn't take a step back. I think he's done very well. He stayed in school because his draft stock, he feels, can only go up. We'll see whether that's going to be possible or not. Ron Roberts at Auburn, defensive coordinator. His previous job was Baylor's defensive coordinator. Comes in there with Hugh Freeze as a new head coach, trying to fix a mess. I mean, Auburn's a mess on both sides of the football. And it's going to be interesting to see whether they can make this team competitive on both sides of the football. Because if you're not competitive on both sides of the football, you're not going to challenge the upper echelon of this conference. Auburn's got a long ways to go to be back relevant again. Bobby Petrino, who we've talked a little bit about. Now, here's the flip side of the youth coming in. Petrino's 62 years old. He's coming in as the offensive coordinator. He was previously, he was a Missouri State coach. As we know, he also coached at Arkansas, Louisville twice. He coached at Atlanta for 15 games before infamously leaving before the season was over. He'll come in and take over the play calling duties from Jimbo Fisher as Jimbo Fisher tries to save his job. Again, $75 million or so is probably keeping Jimbo Fisher safe for another couple of years, but he better start turning this around and turn these recruiting classes into something more than what they've been from a win and loss standpoint. The dynamic between Petrino and Jimbo Fisher in Aggieland will be very interesting to watch. These are two very strong-willed personalities. There's bound to be some clashes. Think Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin at Alabama, and some of the engagement that they had on the sidelines during Lane Kiffin's tenure there. Lance Guidry at Miami, defensive coordinator, formerly from Marshall. Marco Cristobal, I talked about this a little bit, was very unhappy with the culture that he allowed to foster during the offseason. He did a lot of reshaping of the coaching staff after a very bad season last year. Guidry replaced Kevin Steele, who returned to Alabama. He had a strong run at Marshall. He was ranked 6th nationally in points allowed and 8th in yards allowed last year. Now, again, Marshall's not playing, a Power 5 schedule, shall we say. He used to coach. He was the head coach at McNeese State before, and this is his first job with a Power 5 program. But some other coaches that we've talked about here tonight, he does bring success from other parts of college football. So it'll be very interesting to see how that can help. And he does inherit some players. He's got a couple All-Americans in Cameron Kitchens and Leonard Taylor as well. And I think Akeem Mizador might have been a close to an All-American, maybe second team last year. And some exciting young players coming in as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. Again, never coached on a Power 5 level before. Tony White at Nebraska, defensive coordinator. He was Syracuse's defensive coordinator last year. Matt Rule's choice to be his first defensive coordinator. It's going to be interesting to see what happens here because this is an entirely new coaching staff, an entirely new approach. an entirely new system on both sides of the football. But Nebraska can't do worse than it did under Scott Frost. So I think this is going to be something to see as we go along here. White did coach previously in the Mountain West quite a bit as well at New Mexico and San Diego State. And Matt Rule is quoted as saying he's going to bring some fire. And to me, defense is all about that. That's Matt Rule's quote about Coach White. Garrett Riley, Lincoln Riley's brother, had a great run at TCU last year, especially. And Dave Swino may have pulled off the biggest coup of this coordinator's job change cycle when he found a way to get Riley, again, 33 years old, to be from TCU just 4 days after the Horned Frogs had played for the national championship. So even though they only produced 7 points in that game against a great Georgia team, his overall work is some of the best in the country, and it did get him the Broyles, the Frank Broyles Award, which goes to the nation's top assistant coach last year. So it'll make him a great addition at Clemson, and something that this team needs is as sophomore quarterback Cade Klubik will be the starter now, and he's the only player on that roster at Clemson who's ever taken a snap at the Division I level. So it's going to be interesting to see I think how quickly this team adapts to Riley's philosophy and how quickly Cade Klubik can click with his new coordinator and quarterback coach will determine how well Clemson can do this year. And I think Clemson will do very well, but I think we'll get unseated by Florida State in that ACC this year. Who else? Tommy Rees. Tommy Rees, by the way, his name has come up for that Northwestern job as well. If I did mention it before already, the former coordinator at Notre Dame, he and Marcus Freeman decided to part ways after this last season. Another young guy, 31 years old. He'll oversee an offense that lost Bryce Young, who obviously only won Heisman Trophy winner and overall #1 draft pick last year. Plus Jamar Gibbs, one of the best wide receivers in the draft. So he's got a lot to work with here. He had a good run at Notre Dame working with some solid quarterbacks, particularly Ian Book, who I think he really helped develop into a solid Division I player through his time at Notre Dame. But he's got some work to do here. One of his former players, Tyler Buckner, is one of the guys competing for that quarterback job, along with Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson. We'll see who gets that job. If Tyler Buckner gets this job at quarterback, I'm a little concerned about Alabama going forward this year. I think one of the kids would be better than the transfer in this situation. So that's just some of the coordinators that are moving around this year as we head into 2023 and get closer and closer to the first games, which are going to be when? When are the first games, by the way? Where's my schedule? I had schedules up here. First games, Saturday, August 26th, less than 30 days away now. A lot of big matchups at week 0, if you will. Navy goes to Notre Dame. That's a little bit early in the season for that. That'll be played in Dublin again, like it was last. I think that was played. Actually, was that game played in week 0 last year in Dublin? It might have been. I do know they played in Ireland last year as well. San Jose State, USC. Again, that'll be a slaughter. Florida International plays Louisiana Tech. No real big matches in that week 0. But after that, the next weekend, Labor Day weekend, watch out, guys. Lots of football. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It'll be huge getting towards that Labor Day weekend. We'll dive into that. Hard to believe. We're just a few days from August. And, we get to August, I feel like the summer's shot. So we'll see. My birthday comes, I feel like summer's gone. My birthday is the 15th. So send your cards and letters now, would you please? Thank you very much. Where am I here? I don't want to talk about that. That's the NFL. Some news of the day. Colorado's discussing a move from the Pac-12 back to the Big 12. I read an interesting article this week about The Athletic has had an ongoing series about the history of realignment. And a lot was, they recently had a roundtable of former athletic directors, one being Tom Osborne from Nebraska. And he claims that Nebraska's move to the Big Ten was really precipitated by the fact that at the time, the Big 12 had two divisions, and the entire Southern Division, including Colorado, was talking about migrating to the Pac-12 en masse, leaving the North to fend for themselves. And they wouldn't have been able to have a league. I mean, there would have only been like 6 teams left. 6 teams were going to migrate from the Big 12 to the Pac-12. That was going to be Colorado, Texas, Texas A&M. I don't remember. I don't think Baylor was there yet. But there was 3 other teams. They were all in discussions, and it looked like it was a done deal. And that's why Nebraska, according to Tom Osborne, decided to leave. Now, interesting enough, Colorado eventually did leave for the Pac-12. And now they're in discussions to move back. Colorado's in deep discussions about a potential move to the Big 12. Now, remember, USC and UCLA are out of there after this year. They're going to the Big 10. Pac-12 still has no TV deal. The networks are waiting to see what the Pac-12 does, whether they're able to bring in some meat from the Mountain West. Let's say they've already failed with San Diego State, it appears. If they start losing again, Colorado's got a decent history in a cyclical fashion in college, had some good teams years ago under Chuck Fairbanks after he left New England to go there. Had some really good teams under Bill McCartney for years, but then has been pretty much, in a black hole since then. But it's still a good recruiting area for the Pac-12. And if they lose them to the Big 12, that might be very interesting. Birthday party at my house or a pub for your podcast fans? I got to throw my own birthday party. We have to do something. We're pretty much settled here, Rick. So I'm starting to be able to. Last Sunday we actually didn't do anything at the house for the first time. I did the show Sunday morning, and we got out and went up to Druthers 550 Lakeside, which was really, really good, man. If you get up to Saratoga and you want a great spot to sit by the lake, it's a great spot. Not cheap, but no place is today. We had a really nice time, and we're getting to the point where I can probably plan something along those lines. For my birthday, I don't know. We got another major project ready to start here, though. Putting on we have a deck that was with the townhouse, but we're ripping it down, putting up something bigger and tracking the whole thing. So we continue to hemorrhage money, but we'll do something. At the house. My wife might have a heart attack if we do it here. Housewarming. Don't you bring gifts to a housewarming as well? When I have the deck built, we'll do something. This fall for Saturday for college football. We'll either be out somewhere or we'll be on my deck for the loyal local followers of the show. How's that? I will not let this go to bed or fall apart this year. I also plan on getting out and playing golf nearly every weekend for the rest of the summer. Kenny Gifford, where are you? Oh, gosh. What other news we got here? Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti says the league office will be proactive in advocating for the CP college football playoff inclusion. So when he meets with his ADs and football coaches, the conversation inevitably steers towards one important but elusive goal: the national championship. Big Ten hasn't won a championship since 2014, the inaugural season of the playoff, when Ohio State beat up on Oregon. And Ohio State's still the only Big Ten team to win or even play for a national title in both the CFP and the BCS eras. That's a long time, guys. So despite all the money that league makes, they're struggling in the biggest number of all, national championships. And he's made it clear to the coaches that the league has an emphasis on getting there. And he thinks they have a chance of getting two teams into the playoff this year. I think it's going to be very difficult for Penn State. I think it'll be very difficult for anybody but the SEC to get two teams into the playoff. It's just my own opinion. Next year, when we go to 12, that might be a different story. He may still be on the green in the green. I think he is, now that I think about it, right? I think he said he was going. Where was he going? Oregon? Ryan Day says Ohio State's starting quarterback competition is still unsettled. He got to watch C.J. Stroud get his name called by the Texans a couple of months ago, and since then he still has not figured out whose quarterback is going to be. He's now got a quarterback competition between Kyle McCord and Devin Brown that is yet to be decided. And again, it's getting late. It may seem like you've got a lot of time, but you're going to be playing real games in 4 weeks, guys. 4 weeks. 5 weeks for some of these teams. And they've had a pretty good run. Now, again, Kenny likes to talk about the fact they don't produce NFL quarterbacks. So that's not his job. That's not Ryan Day's job. That wasn't Urban Meyer's job. That wasn't Woody Hayes' job. That wasn't anybody's job. Earl Bruce, whoever you want to talk about. Wasn't their job. Their job is to produce really good college quarterbacks, which Ohio State has had a bunch, especially recently. Justin Fields, who may break that mold of no NFL stars coming from the quarterback ranks at Ohio State. But they've had really good college quarterbacks going back as far as I can think of. Some better than others. I'm really trying to remember the guy that I watched when I was a kid in the 70s. I want to say Cornelius Green, but I don't think that was his name. It'll come to me. Art Schleicher was a great college quarterback. Had some other problems, obviously, but he was a great college quarterback. Kirk Herbstreit was a really good college quarterback. Trying to think of some other ones. I mean, they've had a bunch of really good college quarterbacks. Now they got Dwayne, and recently Haskins, Justin Fields, as I said, C.J. Stroud, who just came out. The late Dwayne Haskins, very sad story there, huh? But they've got a quarterback controversy for the first time in a while here. Fields is a third-string quarterback at best. I think you got to give the kid a time to look at. He improved a lot last year. He's a dynamic player running the football, definitely. He's got to improve his accuracy and improve his overall, the footwork, everything, to be a much better NFL quarterback. But he's not a third-string quarterback. Not in this NFL. Not in this NFL, he's not, Rick. I mean, do I think he could start on a lot of other teams besides the Bears right now? Maybe not. But I'll bet you I could come up with 5 teams Justin Fields could play for. We're going to get off topic a little bit here since we're talking about Notre Dame quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm sorry, Notre Dame. Ohio State quarterbacks in the NFL. All I'm going to say, I'm going to preclude this by saying these will be teams. And Rick, let me know exactly. Tell me how the feed is right now, because I'm seeing 1 bar on my. Whenever it pops up, I get nervous, and it just went to 3 again. Anyway, could he compete for a job with these teams? Buffalo, no. Miami, I know you'll tell me no, but I'll say no. The Patriots, no. Jets, no. Cowboys, no. Giants, I like Daniel Jones. If Justin Fields could push him for the job, here's 1. Eagles, no. Commanders, absolutely. 2. Ravens, no. Bengals, no. Browns, no. Steelers, 3. Bears, well, 4. He's already there, right? Lions, I think he could push. Goff, 5. Packers, 6. Vikings. By the way, Rick, speaking of that, Kirk Cousins, he would not beat out. I get that. If you're not watching, I don't know if you have Netflix. If you have Netflix, if you haven't watched QB, I think it's QB. I don't know what it's called. But they're spotlighting Kirk Cousins, Marcus Mariota, and Patrick Mahomes from last year. All insider footage. Again, you know my deal with reality TV. It stops being a reality when the camera comes on. But it's really, really some interesting stuff focusing on these 3 guys. If you haven't watched it, watch it. I've kind of gotten a better vibe about your guy. Maybe not winning a championship, but I've got a better feel for Kirk Cousins as a person, and I kind of like what I see. Audio's perfect with no lag. The video sometimes lags. Okay. Thank you for that update. Where was I? So I'm up to 6. Texans, 7. Colts, 8. Jaguars, no. Titans, 9. Falcons, 10. Carolina, 11. Saints, no. Buccaneers, 12. Broncos, I'll give Wilson a pass for last year, or they'd be on the list. Chiefs, no. Raiders, 13. Chargers, no. Cardinals, no. Rams, no. 49ers, I'll say no for now. And Seahawks, I'll say no because of last year's seasons for Purdy. And that's half the league almost. He could compete for a job. Do I say he'll win one? No. But Justin Fields was a great college quarterback, and Justin Fields has a chance to be a good NFL quarterback, a starting quarterback. I don't think, and again, everybody's entitled to their opinion. You obviously are, Rick. I don't think he's a third stringer. Not in this NFL. Maybe in other years. Not now. What other news do I have here? Kirk Ferentz is unsure what gambling investigation will reveal. There's an investigation into sports wagering at the school, but he says it does not involve a large number of football players, but he's very unsure what the outcome will be. In May, the university announced that 26 athletes across 5 sports and an athletic department employee were being investigated for wagering on sports. Again, the NCAA, along with all the professional leagues, are in bed with gambling sites. This is what you've wrought. Violation of NCAA rules. Then don't get in bed with gamblers. Hawkeye senior defensive lineman Noah Shannon announced last week that he would not attend Big Ten Media Day because he's one of the players involved. Friend said he didn't pay much attention to sports wagering until recently, as Iowa and other states legalized gambling and access has increased with mobile apps and other platforms. So it doesn't talk much about what they were betting on. But we'll see how that goes. Virginia wants to be an inspiration this year. Tony Elliott says they know that this, as the season gets closer, his team will have many reminders about how much they've endured since 3 players were shot and killed tragically last November on a bus trip, if I remember right. And they want to elevate their game this year and be an inspiration in honor of those slain players. So they're basically dedicating the season to those players. If you remember, Virginia suspended the remainder of their season after that tragedy happened. Speaking of quarterback competitions, Penn State has a competition. Drew Alar and Bo Pribula are the 2 contenders there for to replace Sean Clifford, who finally graduated. Felt like he'd been there for like 10 years. And James Franklin again. It's amazing to me. You look at the preseason projections. I listened to all of the Penn State fans after the Rose Bowl victory last year tell me that this team is going to be a national championship contender. And I keep telling you, until James Franklin beats Ohio State and Michigan, they can't contend for the Big Ten, much less the the national championship. And he's got to do it with a new quarterback. So I'm not saying that's impossible. Northwestern, we talked about before. They announced David Braun actually announced that, or the school announced that they'll be conducting mandatory anti-hazing seminars. I hope to God it's not just for the players. It better be for the adults as well. What's this story here? We got another story here? No, same story. Don't care about that. Don't care that much about that. See what's in the Athletic as far as news goes. We talked about that. Oh, wait a minute. That's not even the NFL. It's not even the NCAA. Team we talked about. Kansas. Another guy in trouble. Offensive lineman at Kansas for making a threat to team facilities. I did want to talk a little bit about Johnny Lujack. Great former Heisman Trophy winner. I thought I had he died this week at the age of 98 years old. Johnny Lujack played the 2 final years of his career. He earned unanimous All-American honors at Notre Dame. The Fighting Irish didn't lose a game during the 46 and 47 seasons. He went 61 of 109 during the 1947 season for 777 passing yards and 9 touchdowns. That's a lot for 1946. Let me tell you, 47 and 9 touchdowns. He also ran for 139 yards. He wins the Heisman Trophy in 1947, as I said before. Played great football at a time where Notre Dame was at its peak. In the NFL, Lujack played for the Bears from 48 to 51. And during that time, he was a 2-time Pro Bowler and a first-team All-Pro during the 50 season. And he did lead the NFL in touchdown passes with 23 in 1949. So he's a member of the College Football Hall of Fame, and he will be remembered fondly at Notre Dame for being one of their Heisman Trophy winners and one of the great players in the history of that great university. So rest in peace. Our condolences go to the Lujack family, and Johnny Lujack lives a long, good life to 98 years old. So rest in peace, Johnny Lujack. I'd be remiss if I did not touch on that story. And I think, let's look at I want to look at the mailbag here. You'd like to look at the athletics mailbag, just see if there's a topic that excites me. One of the questions was, this goes towards betting. So would you pick Alabama, LSU, Ohio State, and Michigan? So your bet would be those 4 teams or the field. Well, I got to take the field. First of all, 3 teams from the one conference aren't getting in. So why would I I don't think I don't know how you can make that bet. That's a silly question. Question probably would be better, Georgia or the field. Georgia's a prohibitive favorite to win their 3rd national championship in a row. Something, as I said, hasn't been done since the 40s or 50s. Alabama and USC both had a chance to do it. USC in 2005, Alabama in 2013. We both know what happened in those seasons. Both of their defenses really cracked. I mean, USC still had Matt Leonhard, still had Reggie Bush, still had White, but the defense got bad. They had some scares during the regular season. They lose to Texas in one of the great college football games of all time, in my mind. Alabama had still had a great returning team in 2013. They also showed some cracks during the regular season, lost in the Iron Bowl in the kick 6, if you remember, when they tried to kick a field goal to win the game and had it returned for a touchdown by Auburn. In today's world, Alabama probably would have got a shot still to play for the national championship in the college football playoff. So this, to me, is Georgia against the field. Forget about those other schools. Not that they don't have a chance to get there. College baseball note from Rick. The Mohawks' final regular season already? This is what I'm talking about. Of course, kids are getting ready to go back to school, but it's not even August and they're done. The Mohawks, CMCM Mohawks, again, I'll remind everybody playing Rick, you haven't corrected me, so I'm going to say, I'm saying it right, the perfect game league, collegiate league here in New York State, throughout the state. I know they stretch out to Cooperstown. I don't know how far north they go, but it's through the Capital District and in the southern part of the state, and I think the western part of the state. But the Mohawks, and the Mohawks win this pretty much every year. Their final regular season game is Friday, and they have 2 Wake players this season. Had hoped to review with Larry Sorensen. Hopefully, Larry, I'm going to check with Larry next week, Rick. Larry wasn't able to be on this last week. He was doing some traveling. He, in fact, bought a new house, and they were moving, and they were doing some traveling. And this week, he was at the ACC Media Days, which took place the last couple of days. But I'm going to reach out to him and try to get him on next week so we can talk to Larry a little bit about that, as well as the Wake Forest. We still want to recap the Wake Forest. A great season the baseball team had. Tough way to lose in the World Series, but still a great season by Wake Forest, and talk a little ACC football as well. Georgia was in there, and Georgia was part of that. Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Ohio State, and Michigan. So I guess you can get 5 teams. You get to pick 5 teams. 4 of them have to make the playoff. Or the field. I'm playing the field. To me, this is Georgia's to lose. yeah, they got to replace their quarterback, right? But Carson Beck is probably the front line, and Rick, you may know more about this than I do at the moment. Carson Beck, is he ready to fully take over from Stetson Bennett? He's gonna be the first guy to get a shot here, unless I'm missing something. And then I think another big factor. So that's one factor that they've got to overcome to win a third straight national championship. Another factor that might hold them back would be, is Mike Bobo going to be a capable replacement for Todd Monken? And should we be concerned? I was concerned about this last year, the defense taking a further step backwards. They took a little step backwards last year, but not what I would have expected. So I don't think that will happen. I do think that this is a team that is equipped. Are they better equipped than USC in 2005? I wouldn't say so. Are they better equipped than Alabama in 2013? Maybe they're on a par. And again, if their defense stays effective as they've been the last two seasons, even with a slight slippage last year, this team might be better prepared than that USC team in 2005, because it was defense that was their Achilles heel, just like it is today. So Carson Beck, one of the big stories going into 2023, obviously. Another question. Is this the year the Pac-12 finally breaks through the playoff? First time since Washington in 2016, or will it cannibalize itself? USC is the best shot to get there, obviously. They were the best shot last year. Their defense is supposed to be better, if not significantly better. And we'll see what happens with that. Last year, they had a benefit of not playing Oregon and not playing Washington. This year, that doesn't happen. They've got to play both of them. So I got a feeling the Pac-12 may cannibalize itself again and cost itself a playoff position. What's a legitimate ceiling for Texas in 2023? I have predicted that Texas or Oklahoma will win the Big 12 on their way out. I think Texas has a big year this year. Now, Steve Scarcesian, I think in all his years as a Power 5 coach, has only had one season where he didn't lose at least 5 games. So he's got to overcome that. Quinn Ewers, when he wasn't hurt last year, I mean, he only completed 58% of his passes, which sounds okay in a different era. But today, when guys are completing 65% of their passes, that's not so good. And he averaged only 7.4 yards per attempt, which is 63rd nationally, by the way. Bijan Robinson's what made that offense go, and he's gone. I still think this is the year Texas gets back into the national picture. I don't think they're going to push the playoff picture, but I do think they have a chance to win the Big 12 on the way out. Does the ACC really have a bad TV deal? It's not so much that they got a bad deal. I mean, I think each team is getting a little above $30 million a year. I think the bad thing about this is they're locked into that for 20 years. Actually, when does that go through? Yeah, they're locked in for 20 years through 36 season. They're locked in. There's John DeLon. I'm getting ready to sign off, and here comes my boy, John DeLon. That's what's really going to hurt them, is these TV deals keep going up and up, and the money keeps getting more and more. Washington's the best team in the Pac. I agree. Washington is the best team, John. And welcome, John. Good to have you with us tonight. Unfortunately, we only got a couple minutes left, but I'm going to agree with you at Washington. I thought Washington was the best team in that conference last year. USC, I would not say is a bunch of mama's boys. I think USC's got a really good offense and will score tons of points. The question is going to be whether Lincoln Riley and the kids he's brought in through that transfer portal and a couple of the recruits can improve that defense enough to help that world-class offense. Plus, there's a lot of other good teams. Oregon's going to be good. Utah, which disappointed last year and has a big game at home this time against Florida, not going to Florida. Cam Rising still recovering from his ACL injury late last year. It's going to be interesting to see if Utah can get off to a better start. Watch out for Utah. They always seem to disappoint, though, too. But that's what I say. I do think they'll cannibalize each other. UCLA will be okay. USC is going to be good. Oregon will be good. Washington's probably the best team, as we said. Oregon State surprises. Washington State's going to throw some surprises in there. There'll be enough upsets and enough good teams beating up on each other that they're going to keep themselves from being able to get into the playoff. And again, you're going to see a Big Ten team there. You're going to see an SEC team there. The question is going to be the other two spots. Is it possible you get 2-2? I mean, right now, the best 4 teams in the country. Here's what I say. I think the ACC gets a team in the playoff. I said this last week. I think Florida State, that's my hot take, makes the championship playoff this year, beating out Clemson. And I think it's possible there'll be a 2-team league, which most likely, if there's going to be one, it'll be the SEC. But you could say the same thing about the SEC, I think, as you can say about the Pac-12. And I'm not talking about the level of competition. The SEC is better than the Pac-12. I get that. But the good teams could beat up on each other. I do like Georgia. I like what LSU is. John, I like what your LSU team is heading towards. I think Coach Kelly has got that team ahead of schedule. Auburn will be better. I think Ole Miss will be better this year. I think Kentucky, which took a step back last year, I think will be better. So while I don't think the Kentuckys and the Ole Misses compete for conference or national championships, they're good enough to put a chink in the armor of some of the other teams, which may hurt the SEC's chances of getting 2 teams in. Where the Big Ten might have a better shot, depending on what happens and how the logistics work out of that Michigan-Ohio State game. They come in there undefeated. The loser might get in. There's a precedent there, Alabama fans, Georgia fans. Because I'm not sold on Penn State. We'll get more into the league soon, John. Hopefully you can make it in sooner as we start breaking down some of the leagues, which we'll probably start doing next week. We'll do a few a week, breaking down the conferences. Georgia, Washington, Michigan, and the SEC runner-up in the playoffs. So Washington, you'll think will be. So you don't think the Pac-12 will cannibalize each other? You think Washington will run? Do they need to be undefeated, John? Last year, I felt all along the Pac-12 winner had to be undefeated to get into the playoff. I like the Georgia, Michigan. It's funny you're not saying LSU. Who do you think will be that runner-up then in the SEC, John? I'll stay for just a couple more minutes, but then I got to go. Yeah, I'm going to go Georgia, Florida State, Michigan, Alabama or LSU. So I guess I'm saying the same thing you are. Alabama, LSU. I like that Washington team, though. I'm with you. The only thing that worries me is if USC's defense gets precipitously better, or Oregon and Bo Nix step it up even a higher notch with a new offensive coordinator this year. He did a great job with Dillingham last year, but 5 coordinators and 5 quarterback coaches in 5 seasons is a lot to overcome. And Bo Nix may take a step back this year. We'll see. I love what Michael Penix has done up there in Washington, though. It's an exciting player, and it's going to be fun to watch this year. So John's got LSU or Bama. Florida State will be my outsider, probably as we head towards the start of the season. Certainly that'll change as we move forward in the season, so we'll see how that goes. Guys, it's been a blast tonight. John, I wish you'd gotten with us a bit sooner. Because I love your input on the show, so please make sure you get your French as it should. Yeah, there are a few that are. There's going to be some interesting. We talked a lot about some of the new coordinators this year too, which we'll do more of in the coming shows. Next week again, I hope to get Larry Sorensen on to talk. Finish up on Wake Forest's great baseball season. Talk to him a little bit about some of the guys playing for the Mohawks. Talk ACC football. And then we'll also get into your topics and whatever the news of the day is. We'll see where Jim Harbaugh ends up with his suspension, the ongoing story at Northwestern, and all the things across the NIL Bill. Guys, thanks for coming. Have a great night.